We're all aware of the disadvantage gulf between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians and the work being done to try and close that gap. But what's the story when it comes to business? My next guest is an entrepreneur who's written a book that goes to that very issue, geared towards boosting the economic independence of Aboriginal people. Welcome to Switzer, Neil.
Thanks, Peter.
Great to have you on the program. Now, look, I've been, in a sense, talking to you and writing stories about you for a couple of years, the first time I've met you. But I've always been impressed by the fact you've created a great business. Tell us about your business.
I own the Willmett Group. It's the Willmett Group Business and Employment Services. Our business is a small boutique business that operates in Brisbane, and our work is predominantly in the Indigenous space. We look at setting up Aboriginal businesses and providing advice, and we also advise on employment issues. So for some of the corporate players who might be out there, and also some of the government agencies, we talk to them about employment practices, how to employ, how to attract, how to retain Aboriginal talent.
Okay, so you're an Indigenous Australian.
Yes.
And what staggers me is that there are a lot of Indigenous Australian business people out there. Well, not as much as you would like, but a lot more than I think the average Australian knows about. So why don't you tell us about the number of Indigenous businesses out there?
Right, what we've got in Australia, in terms of small business itself, we've probably got a couple of million small businesses. In the Aboriginal area, in the Aboriginal business sector we call it, it's relatively small. We've got 3,000. Our last census data for people who were self-employed, it was identified at 3,200. That was back in 2006. So the numbers are relatively low, but it's a really great improvement from 1996, where we had about 1,800 people. So we've seen an increase, and what we're trying to do is get the message out there that people can go into business and get the right skills, and we want to support more people, more Aboriginal people going into business.
What are the main obstacles, do you think, that stop Aboriginal people getting into business?
Well, there's a couple of different obstacles, and it depends. Not every Aboriginal person's the same. So some of us come from an urban location where we've been brought up in an urban location. Some Aboriginal people come from a remote location where the schooling may not have been fantastic. So there is differences, and that's the first thing that I guess I want the listeners to understand, that all Aboriginal people are different. But there are some common things that are important for Aboriginal people, and those are issues around cultural obligations. So people who may be involved in cultural issues or cultural business where they can't actually stay at work for a period of time, sometimes that's seen as a barrier. Some other issues that are generally common and probably across the board in business are people's understanding of the necessary business skills, and these are things that we try to reinforce. People have a clear understanding of finance, important. Business skills and around organisation, understanding finance and where money comes from and where it goes and how you manage cash flow, all those sort of things, and asking themselves the question, are you right for business? Because some Aboriginal people who have cultural obligations where they can't go to work, it may prevent them. Where they have responsibilities for larger families, business may not be a suitable alternative for them. So trying to set the benchmark right at the beginning, saying, are you right for business? And
well, Neil, at the core of all entrepreneurs is this aspirational urge to do well, and it's not in non-Indigenous people as well. You have to have this sort of passion, but I guess it's the number of knockbacks that a lot of Aboriginal people have received over the years means that it's hard to be aspirational. But you've done it. Do you look at what preconditions helped you to get in your situation and then try to use that role model to say to other people, it can be done and this is what you have to do?
Oh, absolutely. One of the most important things for me when I got into business was being supported by people. From an early age, I had people around me who were Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people who were highly focused but were disciplined. So there's some really core skills that I picked up from those people. Aboriginal leaders who have fought for us have been an inspiration to me. People forget in this country that it was only, in the last 20, 30 years that we've had a lot of people go through secondary schooling. Still not enough. So the fact that we had people fighting for us to go to get employed, to go and get jobs is great for me. It's very inspirational. The people that I work with, I pass on that message. A lot of people have the desire to get into business, and you're right, a lot of people have received knockbacks, but it's how we address that. We treat it like a speed bump, and you can either stop at it or go over it and keep on going. And that's the important message, that we're going to get knockbacks as Aboriginal people in this country.
All entrepreneurs do.
That's right, and it's how we deal with it.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at some of the leading, some of the business leaders we have in this country.
Yeah.
A lot of them aren't born in Australia. Some of them are born overseas or have parents who are born overseas, and they've faced knockbacks too. It's no different for us as Aboriginal people. We have to get over that and move forward. And it's about supporting other Aboriginal businesses that are doing well, promoting them. One of the things that we don't do well enough is promote some of our success stories in this country. We're very good at promoting Aboriginal sporting success, and that's great. But we should be promoting educational attainments. Now we have a number of people going through universities. We should be promoting business. We have a number of people who own successful businesses.
Give us a name of a couple of businesses, mate.
Look, there's a number. We've got here in Sydney, we've got Message Stick as one business. That's a successful communication business. We've got
what about Ballaringi?
Well, there's a couple, isn't there?
Yeah, well, they're the guys who painted the Qantas aeroplane.
Qantas aeroplane, but let's also have a look at Terry Jenke, who's an IP lawyer who's operating out of Sydney, who's a great success story. In Queensland, we have a number. We have Wayne Denning with Carbon Media, who's doing some great stuff. David Williams from Galimba, which is a design company, an indigenous design company. We've got Lani Blanco down in Sydney also, who owns an employment company. There is a number. WA, we've got Kepper Curl, which is a tourism company. Across the board, we've got some great stories. We just don't hear about them
Neil,
enough.
if there's people watching this program now and say, well, look, I'd love to work with some Indigenous business, is there a directory of businesses?
Well, at the moment, we're working with the Australian government to get an Indigenous directory up.
Yeah,
at the moment, no, we haven't got one. And that is a bit of a flaw. We have people who've done pockets of pulling together Indigenous businesses. The problem that they have is that a number of businesses that have been named in some directories aren't Indigenous businesses. And in this country, we call them fronts, where they might have an Aboriginal name, an Aboriginal CEO or a chairman, but the company is owned by a non-Indigenous person. So, unfortunately, some people get tricked into that. But there are some great businesses. The thing that we've got to really do, Peter, though, is get those businesses and getting people buying services off them. And this is where one of the areas that we can focus on in Australia is procurement. Getting corporate people to buy services off these successful Aboriginal businesses. Getting government agencies to buy, And we've got a lot of government agencies who've put the word out there and said, look, we're genuine about procurement. But unfortunately, we haven't seen anything written up yet. So you started off your session right in the beginning talking about Indigenous disadvantage and closing the gap. A lot of the stuff that we talk around Indigenous business is aligned to closing the gap. We're serious here. As Aboriginal business owners, we want to see people employed. We want to see people off welfare. We want to see people create wealth. And this is something that doesn't get talked about very often. Sometimes you think, oh, what are you talking about creating wealth? You're not materialistic, are you? But the opportunities that are there once we create wealth that have never been there for our parents or grandparents.
And a starting point might be this new book you've actually produced called How to Start a Successful Aboriginal Business in Australia. And these are the kind of things that would be really inspirational for other Indigenous Australians. Are you getting support from Craig Emerson, the Small Business Minister, who comes from your state? You're a Queenslander, and they'll get nailed tonight for sure on the State of Origin. Is Emerson putting his hand in his pocket to help you?
Let's take a step back. Queensland will go very well in State of Origin tonight. But Craig Emerson, no, I haven't had a good talk to Craig, but I am talking to other people within the department. And there are a number of ministers who have been very welcoming to me and have actually opened the door, and we've sat down and had some serious discussions about business. So business is an issue that probably 20 years ago would not have even thought about. So when I launched the book in Queensland Parliament last year, it was in the last week, it was in the room with all the premiers sitting down watching us. And I had to sit there and think, how many of these people would have thought that an Aboriginal person would own a business, let alone write a book about Aboriginal business? And I'm hoping that's the starting point. But yes, we have got some great support from government, and Craig will be next on my to-do list.
Yeah, great. Well, what people have to realise that you are a great role model, and you were lucky enough to be invited to the Barack Obama inauguration.
I was.
And I think they've picked a really good Australian to go along to that as well. Mate, thanks for joining us on Switzer, and we'll watch your progress.
Thank you, Peter.